What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bitter Realtor Podcast. I'm Joey Rockenstein, your host, and sitting shotgun next to me is none other than David Arabian. David, what's happening, my man?
Not much, just another day in real estate. Thanks for having me on, Joey.
Absolutely. You came to the right place for some real estate talk. Let me tell you, our topic today, and something that David should know a lot about, is what it's like to be a new agent in today's real estate climate. But before we get to that fun stuff, I want to talk about some current events that are going on in real estate right now. Let's talk about what is today's mortgage interest rate.
Yeah, so right now, today, Joey, we're sitting around 6.3, 6.4%.
Seems to be hovering about that, like around 6.3. It was like 6.5 the other day. So it seems like we're kind of bouncing around, 6.5 to lower sixes at some points.
Yeah, and we're not seeing any indications that we're going to be having any drastic drops, between now and summer.
Which is unfortunate because I feel like, there still are buyers out there who are kind of waiting in the wings for interest rates to come down. And as our favorite guaranteed rate affinity people love to tell us, it's not about the rate, it's about the buy down programs that are available. So you can actually get a better rate if you want to do something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the buy down programs are incredible. And what I always tell, my buyers is it's if it's the right time to buy for you, don't wait on the rate because you don't know what's going to happen with the rate. You're losing more money waiting on the rate. You're spending money every month on rent instead of paying for your own mortgage, and that's something to take into consideration as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a good point when you say that because, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot already, is that people ask you, like, when's a good time for to buy? Or when's a good time to sell? And like, there's traditionally times when it could be better, as in like a better buyer pool or things like that. But it really is up to like the individual. Like, when is the right time for you to jump into the market and sell your house or, buy a house or whatever?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
It's hard for people to kind of like grasp that, especially with the buy down program, because a lot of people don't know about that. So that's kind of like something that you have to have an agent like David who's good at educating his clients about, what the good options are and to kind of like, go from there and also just like bullet point it for them.
Absolutely. And, they say, this market right now, it's a market that you just kind of have to strategize in. There's different ways and structurings or deal, buy down being a perfect example to make it work and, get a good rate for your client, for your buyer, and get them their dream home. But yeah, it's definitely something that not many people are aware about. And that's where we come in, right?
Completely. And there's some other fun news in real estate, which is the Fed chair. We just had a little switcheroo because Jerome Powell just stepped down. He was done.
Yeah.
And they got in the new guy, Kevin Warsh.
Warsh.
I believe it is.
Yeah.
And so that's could be exciting. I'm sure people are like anticipating an immediate rate drop, which is not going to happen.
Yeah.
Even though our president would like to say it's going to happen, but those things are really determined by that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could foresee, him kind of stepping into that role to maybe do something to like kind of like be a catalyst in getting things to move forward. Kind of like, be a little spark in the real estate world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kevin Warsh, Jerome Powell, had his
He has moments, like,
he had his moments, and I believe his term actually expired today.
right.
And so, where, like you mentioned, I don't think we're going to see, immediate drastic changes in the rates, but we are, of course, hoping that Kevin Warsh just come in and change some things around, and hopefully that leads to lower rates.
And what I'm hoping that he does too is that it seemed like Jerome Powell like would make all these declarations, and then we get to the time when they're going to make an announcement, and it's not really an announcement. Like nothing happens.
Right.
So I'm hoping that maybe Kevin, maybe, and I know there's like a lot of factors that go into it, but still, like people are continually waiting for this, and so there needs to be some sort of activity to kind of like I said, kind of jumpstart things a little bit.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who are Jerome Powell fans, don't fret because he is going to stay on the board as a governor until 2028, which I guess is something that hasn't happened in 80 years. Right. So I don't know what that means in general for any sort of rate cuts. If he's just going to stay on as an advisor or what, I guess time will tell, and we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know, in real estate, you just have to be patient, and we know that, and we try to preach that.
Absolutely. But let's get to the fun part of the show, and that's getting to know people, which is kind of like the antithesis of real estate in general, is getting to know people, relationships, and things like that. David here is newer to the game, not completely new, but he's been licensed now for
For about a year and a half now.
great.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning with that. What were you doing prior to real estate, and what made you want to kind of jump into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually worked in the film industry. I was in marketing, advertising for movie studios, these big blockbuster films. And, it was kind of just a 9 to 5. And I had a family friend who kind of, advised me to get into real estate. And I just kind of took it and ran with it. And I'm very glad I did. Let me tell you. Yeah, it's a completely different, it's a different game. And I so far, I've closed a few deals. I currently have one listing. Um and it's been an experience. It's been an experience. And I can, it is sorry. Um
Challenging, I probably would say, in some aspects.
yeah.
So,
So,
I guess my first question is on that, because you said you had like a family friend to kind of like help
Mhm.
you get into it. So obviously there may have been some sort of like expectation of what it was going to be like.
Mhm.
So you're now realizing what it is like. Like,
Right.
what was the differences that you kind of noticed at the beginning?
Yeah. Well, you know, going into real estate, I wasn't aware where the market was leading
Right.
to. I would say that in the past year, it's been not an ideal market for most agents. But like we mentioned, it's just a market where you have to kind of figure it out and strategize to make deals work. And I think that's really helped me with learning and kind of experiencing what it's going to take to really become a successful agent, you know? And I've had, I've had the, you know, I've had the pleasure of having many opportunities with Coldwell Banker, and I've worked with many top agents already,
Nice.
and I've gained a lot of knowledge from them. And
What would you say, like, when you were learning and getting sort of mentored from some of these people?
Mhm.
Is there anything that maybe you wish you would have learned prior to it? Because I mean, when people don't know, like when you take the test to get licensed, the test really isn't practical.
Yeah,
It's not about things. They talk about meets and bounds and lot lines and all those kind of things, which is honestly stuff we don't use. I mean, that's more of like a title thing
yeah.
that people use. So, like, what would you say going into it? Like, if you had to like go back in time, and prepare yourself a little bit better, what would some of those things be?
Well, one thing I would say is, like you just mentioned, that the tests you take, the classes you take, you really don't know how the game is played until you actually experience
in
it
it.
feel yourself, until you're in it. And I guess one thing I would do differently to kind of get ahead is study the contracts. Study the
Yeah, so
contracts.
important. Yeah, it is like so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Just before you're even licensed, just go through the RPA, just go through it over and over again. Read every single section, every single line. That way you kind of, set yourself up for success when it comes to representing your client.
absolutely. And that's actually somebody here in our office, Jessica Nygren, who preaches about that constantly. And I so value that
Mhm.
because, like, even when I'm writing up offers, and I've written a lot, at this point in my career, I'm still reading the contract as I'm writing it,
Yeah.
just because, like, there are little bits and pieces that kind of pop up that maybe I wasn't aware of or fully versed on. And so it's always good to constantly, like, be up on that because things also change too. Like, they're updating the contracts. And so you got to be up to date on what is going on these things that you're giving your clients to sign.
Absolutely.
So, like, how have you taken that and been of value to your clients as far as like educating them about the contracts?
So I've had I've had the opportunity to work on many deals as a newer agent.
Great.
Being a part of a team and like working with other agents as well. So I've really had a chance of kind of experiencing, from issues that arise throughout escrows to, anything you can name. So I've really just kind of, you learn from your mistakes, right? You
Great.
you see why this deal didn't work out, what was wrong in this contract, what was going on in this RPA, and you kind of learn from that, and you don't make that same, or you take that into consideration the next deal you do. And
So when things came up in escrow, like what's an example of something that may have come up that maybe you weren't prepared for and that you learned of, and now you're better off, learning from that?
that's a great question. um I gotta get back to you on that.
Okay. I mean, like for me, like I kind of felt like I was constantly having to learn on the fly and then getting in my career. Like I had a great mentor and things like that. I was at Berkshire Hathaway when I first started, and they're very well versed in like contracts and teaching about contracts and things like that. But just getting into the practicality of real estate was really a learn as I went kind of situation.
Right.
So, and even now, like every transaction is different. Like it's really its own beast.
Yeah.
Like I just went through 2 escrows that were honestly the most draining escrows that I'd ever experienced. And it was because like things kept popping up that I really had to kind of pivot, take a step back, evaluate what was happening, and then approach it from maybe a sense of like empathy for my clients, or be I had to like put on a different hat and like be like really like an investigator, like a detective, to find out what was going on. Like for example, like the one I just closed, there was major issues with water in the crawl space, and we couldn't figure out why the crawl space wasn't drying. And then everybody had a theory about it too, like the builder's theory, to the agent's theory, to the owner's theory, to the inspector's theories. It's like, well, it hasn't had enough time to dry out. Well, it's not ventilated enough in that crawl space. The soil's too saturated, so it's like delaying it. But we're like, but it's still wet. Like there's still standing puddles of water. And long story short, we had to bring in somebody who was a quote unquote leak detection specialist, and he found out where the source of the water was coming from. And it was the irrigation lines that when they would come on, they were seeping through the cold seams of the crawl space entrances and constantly flooding the crawl space.
Wow.
So once we shut that down, then we were able to be like, okay, there's no new water getting in there.
Right.
Now we can figure out how to dry it and see if there's actually any other problems that we need to address.
Yeah.
But it's like an example like that, which is, nobody's going to teach you
Right.
like how to be prepared for that.
Absolutely.
So like this is like such a business where you are learning on the fly. You are consulting with your fellow agents to see if they've ever experienced things like that. Because that's what I had to do too. Like I would go up to Barry and talk to him, or just anybody who would be like, hey, have you ever experienced something like this? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, so absolutely. And I think that, your fellow colleagues' prior experiences is something that's a big help in this industry. Like you just mentioned, you go to other agents, have you experienced this? Have you experienced this? And sometimes they have, and
Right.
they kind of show you how to navigate it, which is amazing. And sometimes, no one has experienced it, and you have to, like you said, you learn on the fly, you learn on the go, and you just figure it out. You're right.
Right.
It's I feel like real estate is a business of figuring it out, because
So true.
yeah,
Yeah, it really is. And it's that, and then also it's relationships that you develop with your fellow colleagues, because you want to, like when you're working on a deal, and if I'm representing the buyer, you're representing the seller, we want it to be like a symbiotic relationship to where we're on the same team. Yeah, we're trying to get the best for our clients and all that stuff, but the real thing is that your seller wants to sell, my buyer wants to buy. How can we make that happen?
Yeah.
And how can we get everybody to be happy with the end result?
yeah, absolutely.
So that's like kind of like one of the I mean, it's like one of the mountains that we're constantly climbing is like, how can we make ends meet with that?
Yeah, of course. So, like you said, it's relationships play a big role in this industry, and just kind of immersing yourself into the world of real estate. That's what I've been doing the past year and a half. I've met many amazing people.
Nice.
And as a newer agent, I just want to kind of say that don't get discouraged in the beginning. Because it's easy to kind of fall off the wagon. This isn't working out. This isn't for me. It's very easy to just kind of give up, but just keep going. Trust me. My first listing I got in the most unexpected place.
How?
Well, I was on a trip to Puerto Vallarta for my girlfriend's birthday, which I originally didn't even want to go to because, I'm busy with real estate.
Right.
I'm trying to get business. And
I would comment about that later, but yeah, get down.
yeah, so I went ahead and went, we went, it was a great time, but I met my seller in Puerto Vallarta, sitting in the hotel bar,
Amazing.
all the way from Puerto Vallarta to Sherman Oaks, and it was just unexpected, and that's kind of how I feel like, you know it just kind of pushes you to keep going, of course. Like I said, it's hard to give up, but you just got to keep going. You keep putting in, your hours. You do open houses every weekend. You have, you're active on social media. You're checking all those boxes. You go door knock, you send out postcards. Just keep marketing yourself, get your name out there, and it will work out. It will. And that's, what I've seen in a short amount of time, especially in a market like this.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
It really is. It's a great industry.
A couple of thoughts came to mind when you were talking about that. One is consistency. Yeah, I think you kind of hammered that home, which is great because you got to be consistent. Like if you're doing open houses, you're doing open houses like every weekend or as many as you can, as many weekends as you can. If you're door knocking, door knock, because that's a very slow process. And, you got to be consistent with that. Social media, same thing. Like, and it's hard too because there's so many different things you can do. You really just kind of need to pick the ones that you like doing, I feel, so that you'll be able to do it consistently. Because if you don't like cold calling, if you don't like door knocking, then it's really going to be a struggle for you to get out there and do it. I mean, sure, like I've forced myself to do it some of the time and it was fine, but it's not really, I feel like, in my wheelhouse of the ways that I like to prospect.
Yeah.
So, and the other funny thing that I thought of when you were mentioning being on vacation, I've heard this from other agents and I've actually experienced this myself, is that when you go on vacation, you get busy with work.
Right.
Because next thing you know, like I was in Playa Mujeres, which is 45 minutes outside of Cancun with my family. And next thing I know, some of my first-time clients called me and said, hey, we want to list our house. And then another buyer that I was representing at the time, she finally found a place that she wanted to go for. And so I wrote an offer and I wrote a listing agreement while I was in Mexico. And I'm like, no, what better place than on the beach to
write an offer?
So it was pretty
Got a
awesome.
margarita in one hand,
Totally.
yeah, a laptop in the other. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, and real estate is a business where, it can happen anywhere. It's so I feel like you're just always on the clock, if your client needs something.
Right. Which was one of the drawbacks I kind of feel.
Right.
You are on the clock, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been a good one. And
Well, it's interesting that on your journey so far, I feel like you came into it during one of the most, I would say, tumultuous periods of real estate, which is during the NAR settlement.
right.
And I think you got in just after that, because I think that was 2 years ago when the settlement actually happened. And then you got into it. And so what was going on then was almost normal for you. But like for people like me, like things did change a tiny bit as far as like how the structure of the commissions was going to happen, be broken down. Like now the commission is decoupled between the buyer pays their agent's commission and the seller pays their agent's commission.
Mm.
But when it comes down to it, the seller usually, at least 95% of the time, will pay both sides of the commission because that's traditionally how it's been done in the past and what's made deals happen and move forward.
Right.
So, but yeah, that was kind of like the one thing where I really feel like agents, we got the crap kicked out of us because of these lawsuits, and it really put us in a bad light to where people like didn't see us as valuable. They saw us as like the comments they constantly read were like, we're overpaid, we don't work, we turn on lights and all that stuff. Like people just don't know what goes on, in the background of all that. So
Absolutely. There's definitely a lot more than that goes on than just turning on lights.
totally.
But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So, you know, when I got into the industry, like you said, that was the norm, having to have a buyer's representation agreement signed. That was the norm. But, probably one of the very first potential clients I would say I met with a buyer, that kind of that the buyer's representation agreement deteriorated that from happening because she was a former real estate agent,
Right.
and she's like, this just doesn't sound right. That's not how it works. I don't need to sign anything for you to find me a property or show me a property. But that was what changed in the NAR settlement. And yeah, so I'm sure many agents have many stories how it's affected potential deals for them
Totally.
as well.
It's interesting you bring that up too, because the buyer's representation agreement isn't something that was brand new.
Right.
It had always been around, and some agents utilized it, and I would say maybe the majority did not. But I do know agents, older agents and seasoned agents, who felt very strongly about having that signed so there's like not only just an agreement, but there's like an understanding that I work for you, and that, but you also, we're in this together. So it's almost like a commitment that you're looking to sign.
Right.
And then with that person who, kind of mentioned that, oh, this isn't like how it works. That's kind of interesting considering, it had been around, when she was an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like now it's the law. Like Gavin Newsom wrote it into law.
Right. And
So
that's definitely something, we explained. But like you said, majority of agents, that's not something they use, then I guess,
right.
Yeah.
Even now, are you quick to have people sign that agreement, or what's your process?
Yeah, absolutely. My rule of thumb is as soon as possible. And, before we go out to showings, I make sure that's signed. And like you said, it's nice to kind of, be confident in the fact that you have an agreement with your buyer because you are putting in the time, and I feel like it benefits both sides because it makes it more transparent
Right.
on how it works. And I think it's beneficial to have. And I don't know how majority or other agents feel about it, but I think it's a good thing to have.
Well, now it kind of like brings it forward into now. I feel like there's essentially three essential and main contracts in real estate right now. There's the listing agreement, there's the purchase agreement, and I feel like there's the buyer's representation agreement. So now those three are like the main ones. So everything else is kind of like secondary, just as important. But I feel like those are the ones that are like the staple of real estate right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I've also been in the same boat where people didn't want to sign something right away, and then you gotta kind of like play it out, and have the whole talk about it's the law. We can like work through it. Maybe see some properties first to see how the relationship pans out, but then we gotta sign it. So that I do deal with that a lot as well. So I don't have everybody signed right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the case a lot of the time. And it's just, I feel like kind of talking your buyer through why you're doing it. Like you said, it's the law, you need to do it.
Yeah.
If you want me to show you a property, which I would love to, we need to have this signed, and that's according to the law. And
which is great for agents like you, because like I said, that's the norm.
Right.
And if there wasn't like any sort of adjustment period of like, oh man, like how no buyer's going to want to sign this. Like for you, there's like, they're going to sign this. Like there's no doubt. Like, so why,
That's how
why we're talking,
Right,
you know, it's like, that's how it is.
yeah.
So
But I could see, for agents that have been in the business, it's a big adjustment from what they're used to having to get that
totally.
signed. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So before we get out of here, I want to see if you have something to say to people who are considering getting licensed or are licensed and aren't active right now. What would you tell them to maybe help them get off the fence to kind of pursue real estate in such a crazy up and down market that we're in right now with the interest rates and the availability of houses, compared to the amount of buyers that are out there and just like the ups and downs that we're experiencing as agents right now? What would you tell somebody who wants to get into it?
So if you have a license and you're just sitting on it, if you're trying to get your license, here's what I would tell you. No matter what the market is like, there's always buyers and sellers out there.
Yeah.
Every house has a buyer, and you just have to kind of, like you said, Joe, you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent. You can't just get your license and expect deals to come your way. It's
No, they don't
it,
just give them to you.
unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. But it does take a lot. It takes a lot. It's people think you're just sitting, but in reality, you're putting in 10, 11 hours a day
Yeah.
to kind of, work on your branding, work on your marketing, get your name out there, make sure you're doing your best work for your clients, make sure deals are not falling apart. It's really a lot of roles kind of put into one as a
Absolutely.
real estate
Totally.
agent. And I would say to, newly licensed agents, it's exciting, it's an exciting business. You get to meet a lot of people, a lot of, personalities. And I mean, without real estate, I wouldn't know half the people I know right now, and it's really been a blessing. And I think if someone, you know, wants to, if they're looking to get into the business, I know the market is in a kind of unpredictable time,
Right.
but it's the same as when you're buying a house. If it's the right time for you, then it's the right time to get into it.
I think that's hitting the nail on the head right there. Good place to wrap it up. Guys, if you have any questions about anything that David and I talked about on this episode, like what it's like to be a new agent, how do you get your license, what brokerage that you should go for, I'm going to put our contact information in the description below. You can check that out. Guys, you can stream Bitter Realtor Podcast on all streaming platforms, YouTube, Spotify, OnlyFans. Well, that's coming. So,
Coming soon.
yeah. For David Arabian, I'm Joey Rockenstein. This is the Bitter Realtor Podcast. Why are we bitter? Because we're realtors.
Because they're realtors. Thanks for having me on, Joey.
Yeah,
It's been a pleasure.
thank you.
All right.